Hello everyone and welcome to the Quantum Conversations show, empowering communities and elevating leadership. In our show, we'll be interviewing people from right across the strata sector to provide you with various tips and tools to assist you with creating vibrant and connected residential communities that you're proud to call home. I'm Michael Darby, founder and CEO of the Quantum Group, and today it's my pleasure to welcome back David Lipshut for another show. Welcome, David.
Hello, Michael.
David has dedicated 8 years to serving on various communities he's been involved with. He's also a former committee member and chairperson of a committee within a large masterplan community and a committee member within a medium high-rise project in the CBD. It's great to have David back again. If you missed the first show, please feel free to visit our website and be able to access the transcript and information there. David, in our last show, we talked about the role of the manager, so I just thought I wanted to explore that a bit further because, like we agreed, it's a critical relationship. In your experience as a committee member, what do you see as the main ways in which a committee can work with their manager to achieve the best outcomes, I guess, for the committee, and separately, I'll ask you about and at committee meetings, I guess. So firstly, for the committee.
The role of the OC manager is critical to the success of the OC and the committee. Yeah. So for the committee specifically, in essence, the success factors for that is collaboratively engage with responsibilities known. So understanding who's meant to do what, but do it in a way that understands that it might need to be shared, it might need to be done by one or the other, but that needs to be agreed up front. Yeah. Trust is also a key element. Trust that the OC manager will provide sound advice. The OC committee are not experts in the OC industry. That's the role of the OC manager. Yeah. So the trust of the OC manager is critical. And what does that mean? It means the OC manager needs to guide the committee where it is useful, be direct where it is necessary. There have been moments where we've had to be told, you can't do that, and that's important. And they are experts in the legislation of what OC committees must and must not do. That is a purview of the OC manager and must always stand up for that. Mm. Similarly, the OC manager must trust the committee and respect its views in order to appreciate that its decisions may have ramifications for members' peace and enjoyment. We live in that community and we have to live with our decisions. Yeah. Disaffected lot owners and residents can be disruptive. So therefore, it's a two-way street. The manager is not living in the estate, but the people on the committee are. Therefore, there's a balancing act there. The managers can say you must or must not do something, and where there's a conflict because of the implications for the ongoing peace and harmony, we'll need to work that one through. Yeah. But it's a fine one, but critical. I mean, I think that the role of the OC manager in guiding and advising the committee is essential. Members of the committee come and go. Ideally, the manager stays. I mean, we've had a relationship with Quantum for 15 years or thereabouts. So I think that's an important aspect. The history of the OC is in your head and on your systems, which I appreciated because when I asked for something that was old, I've always got it with a surprise. Yeah. So that was good.
Great. Something that we've done at the first committee meeting that ties into this, that's helpful for the manager and for the committee members, we go around to ask members what their expectation is of the manager in their role in the committee and the next sort of their year term. I think it helps us and it helps them, hearing from everybody, make it really clear what people's expectations are as a committee member and what they think the role of the manager is. It just helps them be really clear and get the best outcomes. And we can also come back to it and say, well, that's not the role of the manager, perhaps it's something else. So I think from us hearing what the committee members' expectations are is really helpful. And equally, after we've done that, we share our expectations of committee members. To get the best outcomes, it's things such as read the committee documents. That's going to help us have great committee meetings and get good outcomes. Is that something that you have found useful? That the manager will take that time to go around to all the new members and say, what are your expectations of the manager?
I think there's a usefulness there, but I would wonder about a new member's knowledge of what the role of the OC manager is to make it a useful input. Yeah. But then consultation is always useful. Doesn't matter. In fact, asking the questions will educate as to what is going on there. So I think that you may get different answers from a person who's a new committee member to someone who's been there for 3 or 4 years.
And that's the point, I think. So the new members are starting to appreciate what.
And certainly I have on one of the committees I'm on at the moment. There's a member who is always contacting the OC manager about things, and I say to him, it's not their role. Yeah. So there is that learning exercise there, because loading the OC manager with activities that aren't in their scope is not a good idea either. Yeah, sure. And so therefore we know we've got to be accountable to ourselves. So with regard to committee meetings, you mentioned that before. Yeah. So if we talk about committee meetings, the OC manager, if and I'll put the word if in there because I've seen different phases over years and over client managers and over different OC manager firms. If the OC manager presents a good set of minutes, a clear list of actions to be progressed, and helps prepare and vet information papers and decision papers to ensure they are legally correct, the value of the OC manager is immeasurable. It's a proactive role on the OC manager to do the job. At the moment, I'm having terrible troubles with getting minutes prepared that are good, and I review them and they're missing key things. And even when I finish them, others on the committee say they're still not up to scratch. So minutes are critical because that puts on record the decisions of the committee, and that's important. That gives, and the information papers and decision papers are important because that's what informs the discussion. So if they're all good quality, you'll have a better operating committee, and I see the manager having a role in that. Yeah. With the caveat that the members read it. So you can have the best minutes and the best action item and the best information papers and the best decision papers. If they're not read, the committee meeting won't flow well, won't be as effective as it can be.
It's a simple one, but I think it's a key takeaway to make sure everyone is aware of. You need to, yes, we know it's a volunteer role, but you need to read the documentation. The committee's going to function a lot better, and you're going to enjoy your experience more.
And you know, if the papers are written as I would like them to expect them to be, they're 2 or 3 pages. If you set an hour per meeting, ideally when the papers come out at least 3 or 4 days beforehand, then you'll be a more effective committee member. Yeah. So I think that's a critical aspect of it.
And it provides you the opportunity, if you don't understand something, you can reach out to the manager to get clarity before the meeting.
Correct. And that would then allow the committee meetings to focus on updates on known matters, making decisions and introducing new matters. In other words, it's efficient. It knows where it has been, it knows what it is doing, and then new matters can be brought to it. This process spans operational, long-term and financial aspects. So these are the things that a committee is dealing with on an ongoing basis of a committee's deliberations, and it cannot be emphasised more highly how important this is. So therefore, the role of the OC manager is to make sure the discipline of the paperwork is in place, to put things on record and to allow conversations to proceed efficiently, and then the obligation on the members is to take advantage of that and be in the meeting and contribute. Yeah.
Just picking up on that as well in relation to the notice and the agenda, something we did with yourself, obviously leading up to a committee meeting, we'd have a conversation with you and tease out the agenda and run all the items past you so that we're on the same page and make changes we need to before the documents go out to the committee.
Critically important. Yeah. Critically important. And the timing is important. It's not, I mean, the Act says you've got to give 3 business days notice. It's not the 3 business days that's important. It's enough time for a person to read the papers. So a week is my ideal. Last week we cancelled a meeting in Melbourne because we weren't given enough notice. Yeah. So there was the committee saying, OC manager, you need to, it wasn't you, need to lift your act because we can't make decisions that are informed and good decisions without time ahead of the meeting.
Absolutely.
And that's a reflection of that committee's view that this is an important process.
Yeah. Earlier touched on information papers and decision papers. I don't know, we explored that in the last show, but maybe just to recap, you know, what's in those and why they're important separately.
Yeah, so an information paper, which is it's a paper that talks about more detail about something that is in progress. So, for instance, in the last committee, we had investment of roads, $1 million. Well, you don't make a decision about that in one meeting. So we would break that down into elements, and each one of them would have an information paper which would say, this is where we're thinking, this is where we're heading. Do you agree? It was to bring the committee along. That's what an information paper is.
It's got the history.
To inform, gives background, gives history, gives what's going on. It can change.
Yeah.
It's just a point in time update.
And that might stay there for a few meetings.
Correct.
And get updated along the way.
Correct. Ultimately, what you end up with, though, is a decision paper, because a committee is all about making decisions for the betterment of all lot owners.
Yeah.
So the decision paper has the background, the issues that you've had to consider, the options that are available and recommendations. And then the committee will make decisions based upon those recommendations, or it will ask for clarification, or it'll ask more questions. And if that happens and you can't answer them, then that decision should be deferred.
Yeah.
A decision has to be a good, informed decision. A bad decision is one that is, in fact, bad for everybody.
Yeah.
And won't sustain, because people will think about something and say, that decision we made, I think we should look at that again. That's a waste of time for the committee, and also if there have been decisions that have come from that, you've got to unwind all of those as well.
Yeah. Whilst we know the committee are the decision makers, some management companies will really sort of step away and push all the decision making to the committee, which is the case. They make the decisions, but I guess a half a step we do, which you mentioned earlier, is again we've got a lot of the information, we know a bit of the background, and we've sought the quotes, for example, for a large project. We provide that recommendation to the committee. It's not making a decision, but it's help guiding the members and us sharing our in our experience what we think is the best way to go and why that is.
In the previous show, we talked about how the trust and respect between the OC chair particularly, but the committee and the manager is important.
Yeah.
That's exactly that.
Yeah.
It's if the expertise of the OC manager can be brought to bear in a way that is accepted by the committee as being fair and reasonable and impartial, and can save time, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a valuable thing. So we come back, I think, a few times to saving time and the efficiency of a meeting. We're all busy people. We've all got either social things to do or we've got a work life to maintain. Sitting on a committee needs to be done efficiently. Otherwise, the person will say, what am I doing here? And one sees that in various guises. I've had people who had their work commitments became extreme, and they wrote to me and they'd say, I can't continue. But the worst thing that could happen is saying, it's a waste of time. So as my role as a chair, my objective was always to make the meetings relevant and pertinent, and also something that they saw value in attending.
Sure.
And that's how one encourages other members to join as well.
Indeed.
And for members to stay on.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
didn't have a high turnover of members because they saw the value.
Yeah. And looking to that point, I think it is critical if residents are looking or communities are looking to change the community, they try and retain at least half of those members where they can, because there's always history that's going to help.
Absolutely.
when they're moving forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the history is because an OC has got dimensions that are procedural, like finances and things like that, but also personal, like imposing rules that people may not like about how the place looks, or spending on the gardens or things like that affects everybody. It's got that balance whereby you've actually got to sometimes say, we collectively are making a decision for everybody. Some people won't like it. And those people who come and go come and join won't know about that previous discussion. And so therefore continuity is important.
Yes. And just touching on communication in relation to the manager, how important is ensuring active ongoing communication with the manager?
I have a saying, and that is, a small issue can become a major issue simply by the effluxion of time. What that means is that something that is small, if you do nothing with it, it can become big. So therefore the communication with the manager is to be ongoing, because sometimes you've got to step on those little things so they don't become big. And it means that all issues need to be considered promptly and, if possible, resolved promptly. I have a process that I've adopted for years. If something's small and takes less than 5 minutes, I will do it then. And if it takes longer, I will then work out when to do it. But little things should be done and get rid of it, and it leaves everybody in a happier space. Leaving an issue to fester is in nobody's interest.
Yeah.
Leaving an issue to fester is in nobody's interest.
Yeah.
So the OC manager needs to inform the chair of issues that needs to be actioned because they view it as important, and that might be from other communications from other lot owners to the OC manager. And similarly, the chair needs to keep the OC manager abreast of issues that have been raised with them because they're getting it from the grass, from the field.
Yeah.
A close working relationship should ensure issues are resolved and escalated in an appropriate time frame. Yeah. So that's, I think, the critical thing.
Sure. In the last show, we talked about at Quantum, in working with the chairperson, a step that we took is getting to the meeting maybe a half an hour early and organising that with the chairperson. Just gives you that opportunity to recap the agenda, refine any approaches that you need between the two of you. Again, just to help ensure that the meeting goes a bit smoother. Do you find that was useful?
I did find that useful, particularly where I would have had some feedback on something that was coming to the meeting that you may not be aware of, or may not be aware of the position that was going to come to the meeting. And we could have a talk about how we would manage that.
Yeah.
It wasn't to be subversive, it was simply to be prepared.
Yeah,
and being prepared allows for a meeting to run more smoothly. It was pretty important, and one of the criticisms I was given at times, I let people talk too long. But to my view, if you cut people off, then they'll come back at you later. So it's always important to let the conversation go. But the conversations that we would have before the meeting might allow for a corralling of that, or for you to intervene or interject at your expertise at various points.
Sure. What do you feel is the best way to manage the chairperson and manager relationship? And maybe is there 2 or 3 tips around really getting that right, the relationship between the two?
Yeah, and it is important to get it right. The first one, I think, is to ensure that tasks that are time critical are done on time. The pain that a chair hears is when the same thing comes up time and time again. And it may not be time and time again, it may be something that's only been there for a few days, but it's important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So therefore you get communication about these things. So if the front door stops opening, well, that's pretty time critical. You've got to get that resolved. Yeah. So that's one aspect. And this means that unless a change of deadline is agreed between the committee or the chair and the OC manager, follow up and pester to ensure timely response. And if it's from an action item, well, the date and time is in the action list. But if it's between meetings, then it's in fact a conversation to be had.
Sure.
Remember, a small issue can become a major issue just because time is passing. The second top tip that I would have is put things clearly in writing. An email dealing with one item, I don't like an email dealing with multiple items because you lose the conversation trail and the subject line becomes irrelevant before too long. So one item per email can be routed to or through to different people. So within your organisation, you can move it around, and within our organisation, the committee, we can move it around, and it's got a single topic. It also means that we're going to be on the same page, because when you put something into writing, you've got to apply brain. When you speak about something, you don't always have to do that. I hope I'm doing that today, but and thinking about that is important, and it provides a trail so that people can be made accountable. So I'm a great believer in, you were told this 3 weeks ago, you were reminded again last week, and I still haven't got it. That's obviously a natural ramping up of accountability.
Yeah.
And it also means that things, if someone's away, it can go to somebody else.
Yes.
So I think that's important, putting things clearly in writing. And the third one is to understand each other's limitations. The OC manager might be busy and need to defer to or reschedule a task. Things happen. You can got resourcing challenges, or there's a meeting that's come up that you didn't expect. And this is fine, as long as it's communicated and we can agree what the implications are. Similarly, the chair may have other demands and need time to consider matters related to the OC manager. So I think as much as I can emphasise, you do things as quickly as you can, or when they are agreed to be done, but have flexibility because things can change.
Sure. What qualities or practices do you appreciate most in an OC management team?
Organisation. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's knowing that when you raise something, you don't have to raise it again. That you get feedback is another aspect. I thought I would have it done by now, but I'm sorry I haven't. That feedback loop means that the chair or the committee member that's responsible doesn't have to go back again. It's been proactive. So that organisation, being proactive, being reflective of priorities, that's what's important.
Ongoing communication, and we touched on earlier.
And clear writing.
Yeah.
It's knowing how to use Word, knowing how to use Excel, so that things look good. Because I did a I did a course a long time ago in my career, personal career, and it was on a weekend, and the faculty, as they called them, were all CEOs or CFOs of large companies. And I learnt things, this has been going back 20 years, 30 years. And what I learnt from that was that they said to me, when we're reading papers or preparing papers for the board, if they don't look good and read well, you're already on a problem, on path to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
I've lived with that ever since. So I set a high standard for myself, and I set a high standard for others around me. Because if the person reading it is not being confused, is not having to read it twice to understand it, then they will keep on reading. If they do that, if they are finding it difficult to read, they'll bow out. Mm. And so so a tip that I've got for the OC manager is be good at communication, yes. And if they need to have training, get the training.
Sure, yeah. Just moving into conflict resolution, we don't want to deal with it, but it comes up on occasion,
Certainly
of course.
Does.
Committees are made up of numerous owners, all with differing experience, personalities, and perhaps personal agendas. In your experience, what are some ways perhaps both the chairperson and committee as a whole can best work through challenges that might arise around that?
We've had our challenging members, and what I would try and do is to talk with them. I mean, understand what the root cause issue is, understand if it's something that we can do something about or whether it's just a natural situation. But also I think the important thing is that a committee is just that. It's not a member or an individual, it's a collective. In which case, from my point of view, the fact that a party may have a differing view, if it is not held by a majority of the committee, it is not a view of the owners' corporation. So accept that people will disagree, accept that people have a different opinion, accept that people won't like what you've done, but if they're in the minority, move on. Yeah. You know, it's pretty harsh, but you can't always move to fix everything for individual positions. The committee has to keep moving and has to make decisions as long as it is always making them for the betterment of all lot owners, then that's a good position to be.
Yeah. Just expanding on that as well, I think another example is when a committee member might have a view on a topic and the majority have a different view around that decision. I think a critical tip for all members is you put your view forward and you share your decision, but you need to respect the decision of the committee. If the committee decision goes against what your view is, you have that discussion and you accept that when it's outside of the committee meeting and amongst the community. You can't talk against it. You have to support the view that the committee came up with that may not agree with your own personally.
On the previous show, I mentioned that as a chair, you may have something that's a personal thing that you want to get through, but if the committee doesn't agree, let it go.
Swallow your pride.
Swallow your pride. It is a committee, and the reason that it's a committee, not an individual, is to get those diverse views. The critical thing for a chair, from my point of view, is that you've got to listen to everybody. And I think I would encourage the committee members to do that. Yeah. Sometimes the person who's got the wild idea actually is right. And you've got to actually bring everything back and reflect that. Yeah. But sometimes the person with the wild idea is on the outer and the committee doesn't agree with it. So there is that balancing act, and you've got to stop and think, not just dismiss because of who is saying it or what has been said.
Yeah. And maybe just exploring that further, you may have touched on the majority of them. How do you ensure that differing opinions within the committee are respected and considered while still moving discussions toward a productive outcome?
It's been organised. It's having your decision papers whereby you'd present the different positions, you'd present the different options. So in the decision paper you'll have issues, and they may be that there's two different ways you can approach or options, and the committee has to choose between them. Yeah. So the way that you resolve things is through communication, whether it be written ahead of the meeting or in the meeting. The last thing one wants to have in a meeting is an argument. That's non-productive. It's bad karma, if you will. The members of the committee, next time they meet, will have a history that may not be conducive to getting an outcome.
Sure.
So the last thing you want is arguments. Therefore, listen, consider, and decide.
Yep.
And that's the way I would resolve conflicts.
Around communication, in the above decision-making and conflict resolution processes you spoke about, how do you ensure effective communication between the committee and the wider community happens? And I guess just on that, as you know, At Quantum, we have information sessions for the whole community, which are a lot more less informal environments. We go through what our role is, what the structure of the community they brought into is, what the expectations of owners are. It's a more relaxed environment where they can ask questions opposed to an AGM that's very formal. It's one of the ways that we do. Is there other tips you have around ensuring that effective communication between?
Yeah, the information sessions I found useful. I would have my own little session, and that way it would be more tailored to what our estate was all about. But the presentation by the Quantum team would be one that talks about what an OC is, because a lot of people don't really know what an owners corporation is and what it's doing. So that's important to put that in perspective. I think that with regard to communication, I prepared a report after each committee meeting, and it was a long report deliberately. And I would have people say to me, "I don't have any questions," because it's all in the report, in your chair's report that was issued after each one. Or, "I know what's going on. I feel confident that you're dealing with the issues and the matters that need to be dealt with in a sensible way." Or they come to me with, "You put that in there. Can I have a chat to you about that?" It was as a conversation starter. So that I found was a very useful communication tool. And similarly through the Quantum email system and the app now, the ability to communicate on topics of interest. I don't know if we're at the point of getting feedback on those at this point. Vote of the community. I don't think that's something we want to go with, but you may consider that for the future as a technological enhancement. But I think at the end of the day, ongoing communication about what the committee is doing and what it's deciding. And if it's got a very contentious issue, which we had sometimes, we'd stop the discussion and say to each of the committee members, go back and consult with your community.
Yeah.
Do that. And because we couldn't reflect our own views without having a wider view. When the committee is split, you've got to go to the wider community.
And sometimes, as well as have discussions, we can quite quickly circulate a survey to all of the owners to try and reach out and get that feedback.
And we did that a few times. That was useful.
Indeed, yeah. Another topic I want to touch on is strategic planning, and obviously it's more aligned with businesses, but in our view, and for some years now, we've raised this approach to our committees. And our view is that often committee members are hopping on and off the committee after their year term. As we know, they're re-elected every year at the annual general meeting. And the decision-making can zigzag along the road, down the years, especially as members are rotating out. And there's not that history there, and some might have their personal agendas, and there's no real framework to work within. So our approach is to offer a strategic planning solution where we reach out to the whole community, all of the owners in the community, via a survey to get from them why they brought into the community, what's valuable about the community they live in, and what future they want to see for their community. And that information can get pulled together by a working group or the committee, and to form a strategic plan, if you want to call it that, which really helps form a framework for the committee decision making moving forward, so that they know that they've got some great ideas around what the community, the broader community, does like and what they want for their community to help them inform them around their decision making. How do you find that process and that approach?
We prepared one for our community, and I think the value in preparing it was the process, because it forced one to think about what is it that we're here to do. So we did, I go by memory here, we broke it into governance, we broke in and landscaping and infrastructure and social, and we had all these topic areas, and each of those would have an idea about what we want to do, which is what we consulted with the community on. Yeah. Did they agree with this? Did they want to see improvements to it? Did they want to see changes to it? So with that strategic plan finalised, which went through there was an information session on that, which we had good feedback on, and we made changes. One thing we haven't mentioned is it's important for a committee to be responsive to feedback. So it may have a position, but if it gets a new position from the wider community, it needs to take that on board. Yeah. It's a separate thing. So the strategic plan is, I think, a useful tool. It gives you the light on the hill to where you're aiming. But like all strategic plans, it's at a high level. So therefore, you're not going to be able to make specific decisions based on it, but it will tell you if you're going in the wrong direction. So if we were spending too much on an aspect of infrastructure that wasn't supported by the community, we would know that. Yeah. And that's an important element of it.
Sure.
So I think they're useful. but the use is forcing the committee and the community to think about what they want.
Yes. Just to finish up with some questions around trends that you might be aware of or have a view on, how do you see the role of the committee evolving with changes in community living?
Community living is and I'm not sure I know what that means, but I certainly think that the community within an estate, an OC estate, is reflective of the wider community. So you have diversity of opinions, you have diversity of character traits and things like that. It means there'll be people who will go with the flow. They're the ones who will always say that everything's fine. Others will be very interested but behind the scenes, in which case they may say, this is good, but that's not good, but they'll never tell anybody. And there are others who will be in your face and tell you every time you've done something wrong. They never come and say, well done. That's always, well, this is what I would have done and I think you did a poor job. But that's part of it, comes with the territory. Patience and communication is essential. So responding with a closing down of a conversation is never useful. What I've seen over my 8 years on the OC committees is that the management of finances and certainly the legal positions are becoming more important. In the OC in Melbourne, the building is only 4 years old and the OC fees that were left by the developer didn't fund the maintenance plan and didn't fund the running of the OC. So we had to put in some pretty substantial increases, which hurt people. You know, now it's called the cost of living crisis, but 3 years ago it hurt people because it had some 30% increases because we got a maintenance plan done. So those sorts of things become really focused by people. They're focusing on the finances, and if there's a way of challenging a decision, they will. I'm seeing more of that questioning. So ensuring the necessity to spend money is a role of the committee, and ensuring they're getting value for money is a role of the committee. And if you do that, then you think you're in a safe place.
So, David, some committee members see a role in the committee maybe as a board member of a company and think the Corporation Act sort of framework applies, but there is a difference, an important difference between being a committee member under the Owners Corporation Act and a board member or a company director under the Corporations Act. And I know you have some views around that. Maybe you could share that with us.
One thing that I've talked about before with you is that the OC Act is not the Corporations Act. Yet a number of people think it is. An OC committee is not a company board. An OC chair is not a board chair. There are many differences, but these differences are often confused by many in the community and members on the committee as well. I've seen the effect of the OC Act and allowing people to see whatever the committee sees and to question decisions of the committee. It's a right they have under the OC Act. It's not a right they have under the Corporations Act. But it means that we are accountable to the entire community, including individuals who may have a different view from the majority of the community. We've got to live with that. The committee is representative and remains beholden to all lot owners, and that's the guiding principle that it must adopt. You can't listen to the person who yells the loudest or is most strident. They need to act on behalf of all lot owners and be able to defend that. So knowing the committee is acting legally is crucial. Sometimes this is way beyond the capacity of the committee and certainly beyond the capacity of the OC manager to advise on. So legal expenses are incurred, and I didn't think we'd ever spend legal expenses 5 years ago, but we're spending it on both committees. We're spending legal expenses for the protection of the lot owners collectively and the committee specifically. I've always done my best to ensure the committee members act in good faith and therefore granted immunity from personal liability under the Act. While this is just a good practice, it has serious ramifications should a lot owner engage lawyers to challenge a decision of the committee that was not made properly. For me, this is a sad state of affairs, but it is what it is. And we've had letters from lawyers on behalf of lot owners challenging OC committee decisions, and you need to be able to write back and say, we did this properly.
Yeah. David, might just finish up with one last question. What is your one power tip for a successful functioning committee? Out of all those great information you've given us, is there one you can maybe pull out and shine a light on that's one big takeaway for ensuring a great functioning committee?
A chair is an individual, the committee is a collective, or within lot owners of an estate. Encourage teamwork by recognising the different skills on the committee and, where possible, delegate where to share the load. That would be my one power tip that I've got. No one joins the committee to spend inordinate time on its activities, recognising the real world. But work needs to be done to allow informed decisions to be made. Teamwork, delegation.
Thanks for your time, Dave. That was
Pleasure,
great.
Michael. Thanks for inviting me.
It was great having David on the show today, sharing his wisdom and experiences with us. His insights into committee leadership, community engagement, and navigating challenges have been incredibly valuable. If you'd like to revisit the conversation and all the takeaways or access our other resources, please feel free to visit our website, quantumunited.com.au, or you can follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. Thanks for joining us on Quantum Conversations. Until next time, stay inspired and work with us to continue to create vibrant and connected residential communities.